A desperate call for help echoes across the stars. A peaceful alien colony on the edge of extinction. Their last hope? Not a fleet, not a council, but a ship from the most feared planet in the galaxy, Earth. When diplomacy failed, humanity answered, not with war, but with rescue. These so-called Death Worlders, they don't come to conquer, they come to save. And sometimes, the scariest thing in the universe is just a human running toward danger when everyone else runs away. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The sky above the Volari moon had always been still. A soft violet haze hung like a curtain between the stars and the colony below, broken only by the gentle hum of mining machines and the shimmering arcs of geothermal conduits. For the Volari people, who had evolved in calm, stable environments, this was paradise. Quiet, predictable, safe. Until it wasn't. It began with a tremor, so small it barely registered on the colony's sensors. But within minutes, that tremor grew into a violent shake that cracked open the very ground beneath their feet. Towers collapsed. Mines caved in. Entire sections of the colony vanished into deep, yawning fissures. And then came the spores. Strange, dark clouds drifting from underground vents, releasing something alive and hungry into the air. It clung to structures, corroded systems, and worst of all, began creeping into the colony's filtration units. Panic set in fast. High Counselor Riven stood in the central command chamber, her long tendrils curled in tight spirals around her midsection. An involuntary reaction Volari only showed when deeply afraid. Around her, technicians scrambled to reroute power, patch communications, and stabilize the air supply. But nothing was working. Emergency systems were failing. The moon itself was turning against them. "We have no choice," she said, her voice low but steady. "Send the distress call." Tassel, the chief science officer, hesitated. "To the Galactic Council?" "Yes. To anyone who will hear it." The message was short but clear. A colony of over 800 Volari citizens was in imminent danger of total environmental collapse. They needed assistance, supplies, rescue, anything, and they needed it now. They waited in silence, not knowing who, if anyone, would respond. Less than one rotation later, an answer came. It wasn't from the Galactic Council's core fleet. It wasn't even from one of the known allied planets. The message came from a human ship, the HFY. "Help is on the way," the message said. "Estimated arrival, 3 rotations." Riven felt the weight of those words settle deep in her chest. Humans, of all species, it was humans, known across the galaxy as Death Worlders. Humans came from a planet so dangerous that even its weather could kill. Predators, earthquakes, storms, fires, disease. And yet they had thrived there, survived, evolved into something fiercely resilient. Humans were not diplomats. They were not known for their delicacy. They were known for action, for diving into fires when others ran, for surviving the impossible. That made them both terrifying, and the best hope the Volari had. "Are we sure this is wise?" Tassel asked, eyes wide with worry. "They are known for their violence, their unpredictability." "They are also known," Riven replied, "for showing up when no one else will." The message also came with a name. Commander Darren Holt, leader of the Earth Emergency Response. Vessel HFY. The name was unfamiliar to the Volari, but a quick search showed records of previous operations. Flooded cities rescued, toxic moons evacuated. In one case, Holt had allegedly stayed behind to manually trigger a containment field while his crew escaped. Though he had somehow survived the blast, walking out with burns and a broken leg, still carrying a child he'd rescued. This was the kind of being heading their way, and he was coming fast. 2 rotations later, the Volari's central dome was on the verge of collapse. The air inside had become thin and metallic, tainted by the strange biological agent. Over 200 colonists were trapped in the southern district, where landslides had crushed support beams and buried shuttle docks. The command team was out of options. Tassel, despite his fear, stood beside Riven at the central viewport as a signal began flashing on their scanners. "They're here," he whispered. The ship that appeared in the upper atmosphere was unlike any Volari craft. Sleek, angular, and coated in a matte black plating, it moved like a predator through the sky. Its engine trails shimmered a deep blue, and as it passed over the colony, all systems flickered briefly from the intensity of its energy field. The name Hopefire was written in human glyphs along the side, just beneath the large, glowing insignia of Earth's emergency response fleet. A message came through. "This is Commander Holt of the Hopefire. We're beginning descent. Be ready to coordinate rescue operations." Riven nodded once and the message was acknowledged. She turned to Tassel, her voice quiet. "Fear is natural, but today we must trust the monsters from the Fire Planet, because they are the only ones willing to walk into the fire with us." Down below, the landing pad shook as the Hopefire began its descent. Inside the command center, every Volari eye watched as the humans came closer. The silence was thick, with tension, curiosity, fear, and something else neither Riven nor Tassel could quite name yet. Hope. The Hopefire landed with a low, heavy rumble that vibrated through the Volari colony's foundation. The ground seemed to hold its breath as the ramp lowered with a mechanical hiss. A cold mist escaped the ship, curling over the landing pad like a silent warning. The Volari watching from behind the safety glass of the observation dome were frozen, in place. Many had only heard stories about humans. None had ever seen one in person. The first figure to emerge from the ship was tall, broad, and wrapped in heavy armor. His helmet was smooth and reflective, with a dark visor that hid his face. Tubes and cables ran from the suit into a backpack-like unit that hissed with controlled bursts of air. This was Commander Darren Holt. His steps were measured and steady as he looked around the landing area, scanning for threats. Behind him came 4 more humans, all similarly suited, carrying large equipment cases like they weighed nothing. Counselor Riven stood waiting with her staff, her skin sensors tingling from the slight static in the air. Her second-in-command, Tassel, tried to remain calm but couldn't stop his tendrils from curling with anxiety. Every instinct told him these creatures were dangerous. Their world was fire, their air was poison, and their muscles were built for gravity nearly twice as strong as Volari's. These weren't diplomats. They were survivors from a planet that chewed up the weak. "Permission to approach?" Holt asked through the communicator. His voice was filtered but calm, friendly even. "You may proceed," Riven replied, trying to keep her tone formal. The humans stepped forward, and as they drew closer, the air around them shifted. The suits they wore released a thin layer of breathable gas, adjusted for Volari tolerance, not for the humans themselves. It was a gesture, a deliberate choice to make the locals more comfortable, even if it meant discomfort for the humans. Holt reached up and tapped the side of his helmet. It slid open slowly, revealing his face. His skin was flushed from the methane-rich air and his eyes watered slightly, but he smiled. It wasn't the tooth-bearing kind that frightened aliens in the holovids. It was subtle, tired, reassuring. "Counselor Riven, I'm Commander Holt. This is my rescue team. We're here to help." Riven inclined her head in a Volari gesture of welcome. "You've come a long way." Holt gave a short nod. Time was short. Tassel stepped forward, still unsure if this was wise. "Your ship. It's not like anything we've seen. It looks like a warship." "It's not," Holt said. "It's a rescue vessel, but we've learned the hard way that sometimes a rescue mission looks a lot like a battle." The Volari weren't sure what to make of that. Holt didn't wait for approval. He turned to his team and began giving quiet, precise orders. "Joe, deploy the atmosphere stabilizers. Nia, run a scan of the contaminated sectors. Malik, get eyes on the southern dome. 200 colonists trapped, failing structure. Evacuation route needs mapping." The humans moved like clockwork, They didn't talk unless necessary. Their equipment unfolded like puzzles, becoming temporary air units, scanning drones, portable power cores. Within minutes, they had more operational gear than the Volari had managed to deploy in the last 2 cycles. "They're fast," Tassel muttered, half in awe, half in alarm. "They've done this before," Riven replied, though even she couldn't hide the surprise in her voice. A sudden alarm blared from the colony's internal systems. A pressure dome in the southern district had dropped below critical levels. The countdown to collapse had begun. Holt looked at the readout Riven handed him and didn't hesitate. "We're going in." Riven blinked. "You don't even know. The layout, we've got scans, that's enough. Who's coming with us?" Tassel spoke before thinking. "You'll never make it in time. The corridor is blocked. The contamination is too high." "Then we'll make a new corridor," Holt said simply. "We've got cutting gear and adaptive filters. Let's move." The Volari watched in stunned silence as the humans rushed toward the danger instead of away from it. Riven reached out and gently touched Tassel's arm. "Are you beginning to understand why they're feared?" Tassel nodded slowly. "Yes, but I think we've been afraid of the wrong thing." Within the next 30 minutes, the humans had breached the southern dome's perimeter, cleared a section of biological growth with specialized chemicals, and installed temporary airlocks. They carried Volari colonists, some unconscious, back to safety 2 at a time. Not one complaint, not one delay. They simply worked. By the time the last colonist was pulled from the rubble, Holt was limping, his suit scratched and scorched. He passed a child to Riven, nodded once, then collapsed briefly against a wall, breathing hard. "They're safe," he said. Tassel approached him cautiously. Why risk so much? You don't even know us." Holt glanced up at him, sweat, and methane burns on his face. "Doesn't matter who you are. If you ask for help and we can give it, we do." Tassel didn't know what to say. These were the creatures his people had called monsters. But in that moment, he saw something else. Not monsters, not warriors, rescuers. The ground beneath the Volari colony trembled again, harder this time. Lights flickered, and the control panels in the command center sparked with energy surges. Deep below, in the unstable core of the moon, something was shifting. The alien spores were no longer just a problem. They were spreading faster, feeding on the weakened structures and pushing into areas still holding survivors. Everyone in the colony knew they were running out of time. Inside the damaged dome, Officer Mira Tanaka from the Hope Fire carefully adjusted her helmet, double-checked the seals on her suit, and turned to the group of frightened Volari colonists in front of her. They were trapped in a hydroponics chamber, one of the last areas with partial atmosphere. Many of them were injured or too weak to walk. She crouched beside a young Volari technician and offered a hand. "You're going to be okay," she said, through her translator. "We're getting all of you out." Beside her, technician Len Brome activated a small drone to scan ahead. The tunnel that led back to the main colony was blocked by collapsed supports and thick growths of the organism. Their only chance was a narrow maintenance shaft that hadn't been used in years. Mira looked at the map on her wrist display and shook her head. "It's tight, untested, and probably crawling with this stuff," she muttered. "It's also our only way out," Len replied grimly. Volari science officer Tassel joined them, his expression troubled. "I know this passage. It leads to the east landing platform, but there's a problem." "What kind of problem?" Mira asked. "The spore colony appears to have spread into the access points," Tassel said. "If it detects movement, it might respond." "Like it's alive?" Len asked. "Not intelligent," Tassel explained. "But it reacts, it learns, it finds new paths. If we move too slowly, it may close off the route. If we move too fast, it may attack." Mira looked at the group of colonists huddled and afraid. "Then we move smart." Commander Holt's voice came over the radio. "Status report. We've located the trapped group, Commander. Path is dangerous but viable, requesting assistance." There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then Holt's voice returned, calm but firm. "I'm on my way." While waiting, Mira and Len prepared the evac corridor. They deployed small portable atmosphere pods, giving the colonists temporary shelter and breathable air. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give them a chance. Moments later, Holt arrived, bringing more equipment, and his steady presence. Tassel, who had spent days doubting and fearing these humans, now found himself watching them with something close to admiration. Holt's armor was scratched from earlier rescues, his face tired but focused. "What's the plan?" Holt asked, surveying the map. "We take the maintenance shaft, keep the colonists moving, and clear blockages as we go," Mira replied. "Understood," Holt said. "I'll take point." Tassel hesitated. "Commander, I should go first. I know the path." "You, sure?" Holt asked. "Yes," Tassel said, straightening his back. "I've avoided danger long enough, time to face it." The group entered the shaft in pairs, Mira helping those who couldn't walk, Len scanning constantly and Tassel leading the way. The shaft was narrow and dimly lit, and the walls pulsed faintly with traces of the strange organism. As they moved deeper, the air grew thick with tension. Suddenly a shudder ran through the walls. The floor vibrated. A low growl echoed through the passage. "It's moving," Len said, his voice sharp. "The organism's active." "We keep going," Holt said firmly. "Don't stop." Ahead, Tassel froze. The tunnel had split into two branches. One was partially collapsed but clear of spores. The other looked stable but was crawling with dark tendrils. "We go left," Tassel decided. "Fewer spores, less chance of contact." They turned into the damaged tunnel, moving carefully. Mira supported an elderly Valari who could barely walk. Her arms ached, but she didn't stop. These people were scared, and she couldn't let them see fear in her eyes. Then a sound behind them, a wet slapping noise like something heavy sliding against metal. "It's following us," Len said. Tassel turned back, heart pounding. "It knows we're here." "No more delays," Holt said. "We double time it." Just as they reached the emergency hatch to the eastern platform, the floor cracked. A section gave way beneath one of the Valari children. Without thinking, Holt dove forward, catching the child and hauling them back to safety just before a tendril lashed out from the hole. "Move!" he shouted, pushing the child ahead. Tassel stayed behind long enough to slam the emergency seal. The tendrils thrashed against the closing door, but it held, for now. They emerged into the dim light of the landing pad, gasping for breath. Everyone was alive. Tassel turned to Holt. "Why did you risk yourself for the child?" Holt shrugged, still catching his breath. "Because we could." Tassel looked at the humans around him, scraped, tired, dirty, but still standing. In that moment, he realized something important. The Deathworlders didn't just survive danger, they ran into it, so others wouldn't have to. The evacuation? Shuttle raced through the thinning atmosphere, carrying the last group of Valari colonists away from their crumbling moon. Through the small windows, passengers could see the destruction behind them. Broken domes, blackened towers, and the glowing veins of the alien organism that had torn through their home. The moon was finished. The surface quaked with each passing minute, splitting open as underground gas pockets exploded and the biological infestation devoured everything it touched. But on board the shuttle, for the first time in days, there was a fragile sense of relief. They had made it out. They were alive. Tassel sat quietly in a seat near the rear, his body aching, his mind still racing. Beside him, Officer Mira Tanaka was checking over a young Valari child, gently adjusting their breathing mask. Across from them, Len Brome was sending a final transmission to the Hopefire, confirming the shuttle's route back to the orbital platform. The air was tense but hopeful. They had done it. Together. But not everyone had made it. Commander Holt hadn't returned. Tassel couldn't. Stop replaying the last few moments before the final launch. Holt had stayed behind in the lower access tunnel, buying time for the shuttle to lift off. He had sealed the main gate, deployed emergency thermite to burn back the advancing organism, and radioed in one last message: "Get them home." After That his signal had gone silent. Everyone assumed he was lost. Back on the orbital platform, the mood was heavy. The Valari colonists were receiving emergency care, oxygen treatment, and food. Mira stood at the large viewport, staring down at the ruined moon, her helmet tucked under one arm. Len joined her, silent. Behind them, Tassel approached slowly. "I still can't believe it," Tassel said, voice low. "He gave his life. For us." "He wouldn't see it that way," Mira replied without turning. To him, it was the right thing, no questions. Tassel looked out at the dark shape of the Hope Fire in orbit. "Your people are different." Mira finally turned to face him. "We've had to be. Our world was never gentle. It taught us to protect one another, to act fast, to care for those who can't protect themselves. And sometimes that means giving more than we want to." Before Tassel could respond, a sharp alert echoed through the room. The communication screen lit up, displaying a blinking icon, an active emergency beacon. Mira stepped forward instantly. "Where's that coming from?" Len's hands flew across the console. "It's on the moon, surface level. Coordinates. Place it near a collapsed mining shaft on the far side." Tassel's heart skipped a beat. "That's nowhere near where we left him." "It could be someone else," Len said. "Or it could be him," Mira replied, already moving. "Prep a rescue pod. We go now." Within minutes, Mira, Len, and Tassel were aboard a fast response craft diving back toward the broken moon. The shuttle rattled as it passed through the storm of debris and smoke swirling above the surface. It was risky. The moon's collapse was accelerating. But no one said a word about turning back. They touched down near a jagged ravine. The signal was still active, weak but steady. The terrain was dangerous, filled with deep cracks and half-melted structures. Using searchlights and scanners, the team pushed forward through the rubble. Then through the dust, they saw it. A faint blue glow. There, leaning against a rock wall, was Commander Holt. His suit was battered, cracked in several places. Part of his helmet was gone, replaced by makeshift tubing that fed filtered air from an emergency tank. His skin was burned, bruised, and covered in grime. But he was alive. Barely. Mira rushed to his side, dropping to her knees. "Commander! Holt, it's us!" He looked up slowly, his eyes dazed but focused. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Took you long enough," he rasped. Len scanned his vitals. "We need to get him out now." As they carried him back to the shuttle, Tassel stayed close. "You survived? How?" Holt coughed once, then spoke through dry lips. "Collapsed into a support shaft. Found a pocket of air, got lucky." Back on the shuttle, Mira set the coordinates to return to the orbital platform. Holt lay on a stretcher, eyes half closed. "You didn't have to come back for me," said. Mira smiled. "Then it's a good thing we're not in the habit of doing what's expected." Once aboard the platform, word of Holt's rescue spread fast. The Valari greeted him like a hero. Even those who had feared the humans now watched, with silent respect. Tassel stood beside Holt's recovery bed, unsure of what to say. Finally, he spoke. "You gave us something more than survival, Commander. You showed us what courage looks like." Holt opened one eye. "Courage is just fear with better aim." Weeks later, as the Hope Fire prepared to leave the system, Tassel stood at the viewport again. Holt approached, walking slowly but upright. "We're heading out," Holt said. "Got room for a new navigator if you're interested." Tassel looked up, surprised. "You want me?" "You've already proven you've got what it takes. Besides, I think you're more like us than you realize." Tassel smiled for the first time in days. "Then I'm ready." As the Hope Fire launched into the stars once more, the beacon of its mission shone clear. Across the galaxy, when help was needed, when others ran away, the light of humanity didn't go out. It burned brighter than ever, and this time, it had a Valari standing beside it.